So as you may know, I break down a lot of NBA players' basketball shooting forms, and today I'm going to give you kind of the 4 tips on what makes them shoot the basketball at such a high percentage. These 4 tips will help with about 99% of all basketball players out there. So if you're looking to shoot the basketball better, this is definitely the video for you. Now, when it comes down to it, your footwork is extremely important. You need to know how to be able to get your feet where you want your feet so that you can have a shot that is in line with the basket. Now, when it comes down to it, because everyone's tilt away from the basket is different. Some players, they can be straight up square towards the basket, while other players are going to be more tilted away because their elbow flares a bit more than a regular or other players, and because of that they need to tilt their body more away from the basket. And we need to account for this when we look at our footwork. We can't have both of our feet pointing towards the basket and our upper body tilted. That's just not going to work. We need to have our whole body in line in the same direction so that our elbow can be facing exactly towards the basket. Now, what I'm talking about here is, let's say, for example, you are attacking the basket and you do a quick snatch back. You hop into where you want to shoot. Well, if you hop and you're square towards the basket and you're not usually shooting or feel comfortable shooting square towards the basket, that shot is going to be going right. When you do a step back or when you kind of hop for your shot, guess what? Your feet need to be set the way you like them. Because if you hop back and then say, okay, well, I need to turn this way, that's taking time. And you don't have that amount of time to be able to set your feet in game. You need to be able to set your feet on the landing and then take that shot. There's a lot of younger players who will do step backs or who will do a quick hop step for a shot, or will just step into their shot and they'll be way off trying to shoot that ball. That's because of their feet, and they start getting down on themselves. You may be in that same situation where, hey, I can shoot that basketball at a high percentage when I'm like stationary, when I'm looking at the rim. If I'm shooting a free throw, I'm like 90%. But as soon as I go and take a little bit of a dribble, I'm way off. Why is this? Well, it's because usually it's your feet. You're not setting your feet the way you like them, and because of that, you're going to be missing your shots. So when you're attacking the basket and you do a snatch back or a step back or whatever it may be, you want to have your feet pointing the exact way you want them to point. So when you go up for your shot, you make that shot, unlike what I just did there. I kind of missed. Next, if you look at almost every single high percentage basketball shooter in the NBA, 3-point shooter in the NBA, Curry, Thompson, any of them, what is one thing they have in common? Especially Luka Doncic. What is one thing they all have in common? They have a ton of backwards rotation on the ball. Some have it more than others. Luka Doncic has just a ridiculous amount, and it's amazing how much spin he can get on that ball 90% of the time. But that is one thing that you can improve in your game. Try to get as much backspin on this ball as possible. The reason for that is, if there's no backspin on that ball, guess what? There's no way that that ball is going to be able to essentially bounce in from a longer distance shot. However, if you have a lot of backspin on that ball, for one, it cuts through the air a lot easier. So when you're outside and it's windy, it's going to cut through the air easier. But for number 2, it's going to land on that rim, and because of that backspin, it's going to land on that rim a lot softer, which means that there's a higher chance of it to kind of bounce around and then eventually bounce in. So to get a lot of backspin on that ball, a lot of players always try to figure this out. There's a lot of players that somehow shoot with just no spin at all, and it confuses me. I can't do that. But those players who get a ton of backspin, there is one thing that they have in common, and that is they have very little space between their palm and the ball. If you have more space between the palm and the ball, generally speaking, you're going to have less backwards rotation. You will have more control over the ball. You'll be able to grip it much easier, but by having a little bit of space between the ball and the palm, the lesser space, the more backspin you have. If you have no space, you get a ton of backspin, but you have less control over that ball. So it's almost like a tug and pull on which one is better. Really, to be honest, it comes down to the individual. For me, I have very little space between the palm and the ball, not enough to get a finger between there when I'm shooting, but I do have a little bit of space so that I can still have control. And I do have a little bit bigger hands, so it makes it a little bit easier anyways. But by having a very small space, you can get a lot of backwards rotation on that ball. Okay, so tip number 3 is to get as high of arc as possible. Now, when it's a windy day, obviously that wind is going to be blowing that ball everywhere. You're going to be having like a physics lesson. But if it's a day like today where there's no wind, or if you're on an inside court, basically, if you can get as much arc on that ball as possible, there's a higher chance for the ball to drop in. Now, here's the reason why. If the ball is coming from the top of the rim, guess what? The rim looks like this. However, if the ball is coming from an angle on the rim looks a lot smaller to the ball. And because of that, it's almost like a physics lesson in a way, but the higher arc means that the rim looks bigger to the ball. And to do this, all you need to do is to have a higher release. And this is when recording yourself really comes at an advantage. Because if you can record yourself and you can see, hey, I released the ball like this, that means that I'm not getting any or much arc at all on that ball. If your elbow is above your forehead or above your eyes, then generally speaking, you're going to have a lot of arc on that ball. Now, earlier on in this video, what you've seen was me missing a shot and missing it short. What was the reason why? Well, the reason why is because I didn't use much legs. And because of that, I missed my shot short. If you find that your shot is a really straight shot, it's always hitting the back of the rim or the front of the rim, but it's never going in, what you can do is to essentially self-gauge yourself and say, okay, well, if my shot is short, guess what? I need to use more legs. I need to get more power into that shot. If my shot is too far, that means that I'm getting too much power, and you generally don't want to take away power from your shot, because at that point, you're going to be jumping a lot less, and that's going to maybe throw off your shot mechanics. So what you want to do is just to release higher, because that's going to give it more arc. And at that point in time, what that's essentially doing for you is to taking away power without changing your actual mechanics other than your actual release. And you're just releasing higher, which is going to help it anyways. And this is the fourth tip, which is NBA players. We've seen Curry miss the first 7, 8 threes in a game, and then he ends up making the next 5 or 6. That's because he's doing the mental calculation as to, why did I miss that? Was my elbow off? Was my body off? Was my feet off? Or was it just my release? Do I need to jump higher, or do I need to release higher? And then at that point, if you can say, okay, well, I'm releasing just fine, then maybe it's the way you're tilting away. You can really start feeling the way you shoot after you take thousands and thousands of shots. These NBA players have probably taken hundreds of thousands of shots, and that's kind of my 4.5 tip, my almost 5th tip, which is just take as many shots as you can with your form so that you can feel it when your form is off. I hope that you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, hit that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you guys again next time.